future me. There are a few insights that have emerged lately that I think you might want to remember. But first, I'd like to remind both of us of something that former me found fascinating, which I think might be relevant. It's about the famous case study of H.M., a man who, after having parts of his brain removed to cure his epilepsy, could form no new memories. Despite this, he could still learn new motor skills, like drawing while looking only in a mirror. He learned how to do something that, if asked, he would swear he could not do and had never even tried. The upshot of this is that these learning pathways are distinct, even in those of us with intact brains. This seems to go a long way towards explaining how our espoused beliefs can end up so out of sync with our actions. My experience in Otto Scharmer's U-Lab at MIT is kind of like H.M. flipped on his head. I thought I knew things that I didn't really know. In the U-Lab, my body was engaged as an equal participant in deepening my understanding of something my conscious mind had long believed was true, that the deepest learning entails both knowing that as well as knowing how to. Okay, future self, I sense you might be watching this and saying, duh. But ask yourself, how many things are you currently running around espousing that you are not practicing? I rest my case, so listen up. The key to HM's learning and to our syncing up our beliefs and actions is practice. Practices like the U have resulted in clarity of purpose and action. It's that simple. Time and time again, our experiences of contemplative practices, including countless varieties of yoga and meditation, have echoed the shape of the U. They guide our attention below the surface into deeper ways of knowing. When we've showed up for the practice, coming up the right side of the U is the easy part, like bobbing up to the surface propelled by the laws of physics. In hindsight, these practices have served a critical purpose for you and me. They've allowed us to chart a course to stillness when the need wasn't urgent, so now we know the way in times of discomfort or distress. One of the things I most wish you to remember about our experience in the U-Lab is the clarity that emerged at the culmination of a reflective exercise that Otto led us through, and also the potency of the practice that revealed it. If you recall it as a journaling practice, you have forgotten the physicality of it. Over an hour into his 17-question practice, Otto invited us to stand, eyes closed, and step into the future wanting to be born. Although it seemed as if it took an eternity to appear, a castle took shape, and in front of the castle, a lake formed. It was a desolate landscape, too high in the mountains to support any living creature, and frankly, it bummed me out. There was an option to take another step, to see what might be beyond this place. I walked into some kind of lobby where a conference or convention was underway. Here, I found the warmth and hum of small clusters of people making sense of ideas and experience. It sounded like monks chanting. Otto invited us to turn around and take another step back towards the place where we had been sitting. I stepped into a sanctuary complete with vaulted ceilings and stained glass windows. People looked at me as I entered as if expecting me to do something. Otto asked us if there was a piece of advice we would give to our former selves. Myself that existed just minutes ago, sitting in the chair that I now saw in front of me as I opened my eyes. My advice to myself was to build an interior castle, a sanctuary, a monastery, to become it through practice, but not just using the solitary practices I already had, like yoga, to extend my practices further into the world as Otto had done with us. In the weeks following that exercise, I've recalled this advice several times when I noticed the comforting buzz of people deep in conversation. I don't ever remember taking note of this experience before as an adult, My closest memory is of the sounds washing over me while falling asleep under the coffee table when I was little. The theme of home surfaced many times during the U Lab. In another practice, we created sculptures out of Play-Doh. In my rendition of the emerging future, what had been a blob off to the side representing my currently displaced home became little pieces of home spread throughout my world. The vision of myself as a roving sanctuary that arrived weeks later during the 17 questions practice only reinforced this emerging future. These insights have been germinating for some time now, but they were fed by the reflective practices with which we experimented in the U Lab. Although the idea is not new to me, the fact that so many of these practices were embodied felt revelatory. Maybe because they're almost unprecedented in my experience in academia. The U Lab represented a rare event in higher education as I've known it, learning both a theory and its application. When I expressed a desire to observe Otto's class so I might tell the story of the learning of the group, he said, "I think it's much better being a participant ethnographer than looking into your tribe from outside." And so I ended up as both student and observer. I'm somewhat saddened by the fact that in the end it appears I've told only my story, but then I am bolstered by the idea that storytelling, when engaged over time and with others, results not in one story but three. The story I tell, the story you hear through the lens of your own experience, and the story that we co-create through reflection, dialogue, and action. So, future me, although this is our story, we can take heart in the fact that it could not have come into being without our fellow practitioners